gear. The key question with Larry Bird, they were in a hard cap in the NBA, and when you look at this and bringing it
Larry
back...
Bird has never been the kind of legend who talks just to fill silence. He never chased cameras, never needed headlines, and never cared about saying the right thing just to satisfy the moment. When Larry Bird speaks, people listen for one reason, because he only opens his mouth when he believes something matters. Music. This is a man who built his legacy on cold-blooded confidence, brutal honesty, and a game so sharp it could silence entire arenas. A three-time NBA champion. A Hall of Famer. A basketball icon whose stare alone could rattle opponents before the opening tip. A player who made trash talk feel like poetry and pressure feel like home. 4 decades, Bird has existed almost like a myth, seen rarely, heard even less, and never pulled into the noise unless he chooses to step into it himself. And in today's non-stop sports culture, where everyone has an opinion, a podcast, a hot take, and a reaction ready before the moment is even over, Bird has stayed almost completely absent. No constant commentary. No public campaigning. No need to insert himself into every debate. He's become something close to a ghost in the middle of a media storm that never stops spinning. But then, in one unbelievable moment, everything changed. Because just minutes ago, on live television, Larry Bird walked straight toward Caitlin Clark, reached for the microphone in her hand, and said something that sent shockwaves through the basketball world. And what happened next, especially Caitlin Clark's response, instantly became bigger than a post-game interview, bigger than a highlight, maybe even bigger than basketball itself. Music. Quick favor before we keep going. If you enjoy this kind of content, take 1 second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps more than you know. A huge percentage of people who watch these videos haven't subscribed yet, and even though it's completely free, it makes a massive difference for the channel. If you've already subscribed...
Collective bargaining agreement is coming up. They're going to have an intense meeting for All-Star Weekend. And I wanted to bring this up for...
To really understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to go back and see how it all unfolded. At first, it looked like a completely ordinary post-game interview. Nothing about the setup suggested history was about to happen. Caitlin Clark had just led the Indiana Fever to a gritty comeback win, the kind of victory that tells you more about a player than any stat line ever could. She finished with 28 points, 10 assists, and a deep three in the final stretch that sent the home crowd into a frenzy. It was one of those performances that felt bigger than the box score, equal parts poise, toughness, and pure shot-making under pressure. So when the interview started, the tone was standard. Calm. Predictable. The sideline reporter praised Clark's leadership, mentioned the comeback, and started asking her about the chemistry she was building with her teammates. Music, Clark, as always, handled it with composure. She smiled, answered cleanly, stayed respectful, and looked every bit like the face of a franchise learning how to carry expectations in real time. Then something changed. At first it was just noise. A strange lift in the crowd. Not the usual post-game chatter, not the gradual drift of fans toward the exits, but a sudden swell of sound that felt focused, like thousands of people all reacting to the exact same thing at once. The volume rose fast, louder than it had been all night, and suddenly the energy in the arena snapped in a different direction. Out from the tunnel came Larry Bird. Not on a screen. Not in a tribute package. Not in some scheduled ceremonial appearance. Larry Bird himself, walking with purpose, eyes locked straight ahead, moving directly toward the broadcast table where Caitlin Clark stood. At first, she didn't even see him. She kept answering the question, still smiling, still in post-game mode. But then the interviewer stopped mid-sentence. The cameras widened. People in the stands stood up one row after another. Heads turned. Phones came out. You could feel the building realizing, all at once, that this was not normal. This was not scripted. This was not some cute made-for-TV crossover. Something real was happening. Clark turned. And she froze. Not in fear. Not in confusion. In disbelief. Because walking toward her was a man who almost never makes public appearances, never rushes into media moments, and certainly doesn't interrupt them. Larry Bird was coming straight for her. Music. The whole arena could feel the temperature change. You know those moments in sports when everyone senses significance before anyone can explain it? This was one of those moments. Time seemed to slow down. The crowd was loud, but the scene somehow felt quiet. Every eye in the arena was locked on Bird and Clark, and nobody knew exactly what was coming next. Then Bird reached the table. He didn't grandstand. He didn't posture. He didn't play to the cameras. He simply leaned in, took the microphone from Clark's hand with calm intention, turned toward the camera, and began to speak. And the words he said are the kind of words people are going to replay for years. "I've been watching," he said, in that steady, grounded voice only Larry Bird has. "For a long time. And what I'm seeing here. This is different. This is real. She's the real thing." The building went dead silent. Then he kept going. "I haven't seen this kind of toughness in a long time. She competes. She takes the hits. She keeps showing up. And I'm not going to stand around while people try to tear her down for being great." That was it. That was the detonation point. Music. For half a second, the entire arena just absorbed it. Then the place exploded. Because Bird wasn't just complimenting her game. He wasn't tossing out a legend to rookie pat on the back. He was doing something much heavier than that. He was stepping into the middle of the fire. Publicly. Deliberately. Forcefully. And he was doing it for Caitlin Clark, the rookie who had walked into the league under a microscope, who had been fouled hard, questioned constantly, criticized from every angle, and made into a symbol before she ever got the chance to simply be a player. Music. And Clark felt it. You could see it hit her in real time. She brought a hand to her face. She shook her head slightly, like she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. Her lips tightened. Her eyes filled. And then, on live television, for the first time in front of the world, Caitlin Clark broke down in tears. Not because she was fragile. Not because the pressure had finally gotten to her. But because one of the greatest competitors the sport has ever seen had just looked directly at her and said, in front of everyone, "I see you. I know what this costs. And you belong here." Music. Bird still wasn't done. He handed nobody a softer version. He didn't dress it up in corporate language or try to make it digestible for people looking to be offended. He said exactly what he meant. "She doesn't need protecting," he said. "But she does deserve respect. And if you can't give her that, then you're not watching basketball. You're watching your own insecurities." That line hit like a hammer. Music. No filter. No PR polish. No safe middle ground. Just Larry Bird doing what Larry Bird has always done, cutting straight through the noise and getting to the heart of it in one clean sentence. Then he gave the microphone back. Clark stood there wiping tears from her face. The interviewer barely knew where to step. The cameras kept rolling because what else could they do? Nobody wanted to interrupt the moment. Nobody wanted to reduce it with analysis too early. For a few seconds, it felt like time had folded in on itself. Old school greatness meeting new school pressure in one completely unscripted collision. No logo could manufacture it. No campaign could fake it. It was too raw. Too human. Too honest. Music. And that's why it mattered. Because the truth is, no rookie in recent WNBA memory has stepped into this level of attention carrying more scrutiny than Caitlin Clark. From the second she entered the league, every movement was judged. Every miss became a segment. Every foul became a debate. Every reaction was clipped, reposted, interpreted, and weaponized. Her arrival brought excitement to the league, but it also dragged decades of unresolved tension right into the spotlight with her. Music. She became more than a player almost overnight. She became a symbol. To some, she represented the future of the league. To others, she became a target, someone onto whom every cultural frustration, every media resentment, every identity argument could be projected. That's a brutal thing to put on any young athlete, especially one just trying to play basketball at the highest level. And through all of it, she kept showing up. She kept playing. She kept competing. She didn't fold. She didn't beg for sympathy. She didn't retreat. And that is exactly the kind of thing Larry Bird would notice. Because unlike a lot of the people discussing her from a distance, Bird actually understands what it means to be resented for your excellence. He knows what it feels like when confidence is called arrogance, when competitive fire gets framed as disrespect, when greatness makes people uncomfortable because it refuses to apologize for itself. Music. He knows what it's like to walk into hostile arenas and answer all the noise with shot making. He knows what it means to have your words twisted because people are more comfortable with a quieter version of you than the real one. He understands the burden of being exceptional in a way only a handful of athletes ever can. So when he looked at Caitlin Clark, he didn't just see a popular rookie or a ratings magnet or the center of a media storm. He saw a basketball soul. He saw somebody wired to compete. Somebody who plays to win first, not to fit in. Somebody who refuses to smooth out every edge of her game and personality just to make everybody comfortable. And in that sense, Bird wasn't simply praising Clark. He was recognizing one of his own. Music. That's why his public support carried so much weight. It wasn't sentimental. It wasn't random. And it definitely wasn't casual. It was a power move. In an era where so many public statements are filtered, softened, and run through 10 layers of caution, Bird's words hit with unusual force because they felt real. Clarke's authenticity is a huge part of why fans connect with her. But it's also a huge part of why some people can't stand her. When you are genuine in public, you don't just attract support, you attract resentment. Music. Clarke has heard it all. She's overrated. She gets too much attention. She's too loud. Too confident. Too privileged. Too celebrated. Too this. Too that. The labels change depending on who's talking, but the pattern stays the same. The game gets overshadowed by whatever people want to project onto her. Larry Bird wasn't interested in any of that. To Bird, the only question that matters is simple: can you play? Can you take the pressure? Can you compete when the building is shaking? Can you absorb contact, criticism, and chaos without losing your nerve? And from his perspective, Caitlin Clarke had already answered every one of those questions. Music. His message was unmistakable: she belongs. She's part of the lineage. And if you can't see that, then the problem isn't her game, it's your vision. The reaction was instant. Within minutes, social media exploded. Larry Bird and Caitlin Clarke were trending everywhere. Former NBA players started posting clips and reactions. Retired legends chimed in. Commentators who almost never agree on anything suddenly found themselves saying the same thing. When Larry Bird speaks like that, you stop and listen. Music. One post summed it up perfectly: if Larry said she's the truth, then that conversation is over. Another read: this is a turning point. The room just changed. And it really did feel that way. Because Bird is not a man who spends influence carelessly. He doesn't show up just to go viral. He doesn't hand out public endorsements like souvenirs. So for him to walk into that moment and stand beside Clarke so openly made it impossible to dismiss as hype. The gesture itself had authority. The league felt it too. Within hours, full footage of the moment was everywhere. The WNBA pushed the clip across every major platform. No trimming. No sanitizing. No trying to reduce it into one line. Just the full scene, exactly as it happened. By the next morning, it had racked up tens of millions of views. Music. Brands moved quickly. Sponsors started calling. The Fever's next stretch of home games gained even more heat. Merchandise numbers surged. Online shops lit up with fans hunting for anything tied to the moment. A crossover between Bird's legacy and Clarke's rising star suddenly felt like a marketing dream. But more importantly, it felt culturally real, which is why people responded to it. But the biggest shift wasn't commercial. It was emotional. It was tonal. For weeks, and really for months, criticism around Clarke had carried a certain edge, some of it fair basketball critique, plenty of it obviously personal, and a lot of it tangled up in things bigger than the sport itself. After Bird's statement, that edge softened. Not because everybody changed their opinion overnight, but because one of the most respected competitors in basketball had just made open hostility toward her feel unserious. Music. He made it harder to sneer. Harder to nitpick every little thing. Harder to pretend she hadn't earned what she was earning. He didn't erase the debate, but he changed the temperature of it. And maybe the most powerful part of all? Caitlin Clarke didn't have to defend herself. She didn't need a perfect press conference answer. She didn't need a social media statement. She didn't need to clap back. Larry Bird did it for her, with decades of credibility behind every syllable. Music. That is why this moment landed like more than a highlight. It felt like a declaration. A passing of responsibility. A cross-generational handoff between a legend who understood exactly what greatness costs and a young star learning, in real time, how heavy that cost can be. In a lot of ways, Bird gave voice to what millions of fans had already been feeling: let the kid play. Let her grow. Let her struggle, shine, adjust, and evolve without treating excellence like something suspicious. Stop acting like being special is something that needs to be punished before it can be celebrated. Music. And once that happened, something in Clarke seemed to loosen. For the rest of the night, she looked different, not in skill, but in spirit. Lighter. Freer. More at peace. The burden didn't disappear, but for a moment it looked like it shifted. She smiled more. Moved more naturally. Played with the joy that made people fall in love with her game in the first place. Music. And when the fourth quarter tightened, she answered with basketball, the language she trusts most. Shot after shot. Read after read. Big possession after big possession. She finished the game playing with the kind of fearless rhythm that reminds you why all the noise exists in the first place, because players like this force attention. Later, in the locker room, reporters asked her about what had just happened. Her voice still shook when she answered. "I didn't expect that," she said. "I really didn't. But if Larry Bird thinks I belong here, then maybe I need to stop questioning that myself." Music. That line said everything. Because beneath all the headlines, all the arguments, all the ratings talk and cultural debate, there is still a young athlete trying to navigate the impossible weight of becoming something huge while still figuring herself out. Confidence doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. Greatness doesn't mean criticism doesn't sting. Sometimes even the strongest competitors need one unmistakable moment of recognition to remind them that what they are carrying is real, and that they are carrying it well. And that is what Larry Bird gave her. Not pity. Not protection. Validation. Music. The kind that cannot be faked because it comes from someone whose resume is carved into the history of the game. Caitlin Clark is doing more than breaking records. She is breaking open conversations. She is forcing the sport, the media, and the fans to confront what they celebrate, what they resent, and why. She isn't asking for special treatment. She's asking for fairness. She's asking to be seen as what she is, a competitor, a playmaker, a shot maker, and a player worthy of respect. And in that unforgettable moment, she got that respect from one of the few people whose voice could stop the entire sports world in its tracks. That is why this won't be remembered as just Larry Bird defending a rookie. It will be remembered as something larger. A legend standing up for the future of the game. A giant of one era recognizing the force of the next. A moment when basketball, stripped of all the noise around it, briefly told the truth out loud. Music. And now the torch feels a little more visible. Larry Bird carried it in his time with cold precision and fearless honesty. Caitlin Clark looks ready to carry it forward in hers, with range, swagger, toughness, and the refusal to back down.